I know my story is a bit long, or at least the context is, but to tell it properly, I need to explain a bit. I've only been to Italy once, and I had the opportunity to visit Venice with my husband's family. We went in December and stayed at the Gritty Palace. It's worth mentioning that December is the rainy season there, and the entire city floods due to the sinking caused by the weight of the buildings. In some places, the water can even reach up to 50 centimeters in height. Because of this, you have to walk on platforms through the streets, and many locals leave for dry and warm places during the Christmas holidays, leaving many houses empty and the streets lonely and dark. Overall, it's a gloomy city with a somewhat strange vibe in many places. I felt odd. There was a sense of oppression, which I believe has to do with the enormous number of deaths that occurred there since the Black Plague. The sick were sent to the island of Poveglia in front of the city. There were many trials during the Inquisition in St. Mark's Square, and with the two great wars, you can imagine how many ghosts might be wandering around. During that trip, I was there for only 3 days, and on the second night, I got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. There were some lights on the floor to avoid tripping, so it wasn't completely dark, but the place wasn't sufficiently illuminated either. When I reached the bathroom, I suddenly saw the silhouette of a woman. She appeared misty, and I couldn't see her clearly, although I could make out that she was wearing a puffy dress, like one from the mid-19th century, but it was deteriorated and very discolored. I felt something from her. It was sadness. However, this frightened me immensely, so I ran back to bed and couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I told my husband about it. I'm not sure if he believed me at the time, but the conversation ended there and we went out for a walk. That night was the Christmas Eve dinner. We were in a restaurant, everything was lovely, and I had almost forgotten what I had experienced. Suddenly, my husband got up to go to the bathroom. When he came back, he seemed a bit strange and asked me to join him in the lobby. We stopped in front of a painting, and my husband said, "Could that be the woman you saw?" I swear, when I turned to look at the painting, I nearly fainted. It was the same woman I had seen. I don't know who she was. I can't remember her name, but I suppose she was the owner of that palace. Naturally, I couldn't sleep again that night. To make things worse, around 3 a.m. an alarm started sounding, the air raid siren. Anyone who has seen World War II movies knows what it sounds like. But my husband calmed me down by explaining that it is used nowadays to warn that the tide is rising. Honestly, it was a strange trip. While the city is beautiful, I am quite sensitive to these types of things, so I am pretty sure I would never return to Venice. This happened last year during the end-of-year holidays. My family and I booked a hotel, nothing luxurious, just the essentials: a room, bed, private bathroom. And outside was a pool that we could see from our second-floor rooms where we were staying. My cousins and I were excited to get into the pool, so we headed there almost immediately upon arrival. The next morning, the first thing we did was go swimming again. We saw some small children swimming as well, and at one point, one of them said he touched something under the water. We went over, and one of my cousins reached in and felt something too. The older boy grabbed whatever it was and lifted it a bit, and then we realized it was a drowned person. We quickly got out and alerted our parents. The police arrived and pulled him out. It was a man of about 20 years old. His face was green and blue, and his arms were stiff in an upward position. That image will never leave my mind. Seeing it made me vomit from the shock. We found out he had died because he was under the influence of alcohol and had come from a party. We left that same day and never went back. I have waited for this moment for many years. I work as a maid, room cleaning staff for those who don't know, and since October of last year, when I touched and placed an ojo de vado, which I must clarify, I didn't know at the time what it was or what it was for, several paranormal things have started happening specifically to me and on the floor where I usually work. Once, along with another colleague, we heard someone suddenly knocking on the door. When we looked out, we realized there was no one there. This room, to give you context, was adjacent to a wall on one side, and on the other side, if someone wanted to hide, they would have had to run to the corner where the elevator is, and their footsteps would have been heard in the hallway. So we couldn't find an explanation for what we heard. Moreover, not even 10 seconds had passed since the knocking, so it was evident that the responsible party couldn't have simply hidden or escaped. On another occasion, the handle of a door leading to the service elevator started moving from inside as if someone was trying to open it. At that moment, I thought it might be another colleague with their hands full, so I opened the door and found nothing on the other side. The curious thing is that there's a light with a motion sensor right there, and at that moment it was off, indicating that no one was there. Another day, while cleaning a bathroom in a room, I suddenly heard the air conditioning turn on. This device makes a beep when it's operated, and it was heard repeatedly and very quickly, as if someone were playing with it. But as you can imagine, when I went to check, I found nothing and no one in the room. All these events and more started happening, and I believe it's because I played with that ojo de vado, which they say is meant to trap bad vibes. They say that when I put it on, those vibes transferred to me, causing these kinds of activities to occur more where I am. It's nothing very serious, but it does make us uneasy at times. We even joke that it's due to Xanax or something like that, mostly for laughs. However, sometimes I feel like there's someone behind me, and in those moments I think, don't turn around, for the love of God, don't turn around. By the way, the hotel I work at isn't a rundown motel or anything like that. It's part of a large, family-friendly chain. The building was remodeled after 2019, so it's a recent hotel, and doesn't seem to have a history of murders, rituals, or other things that might leave spirits behind, as someone might think. This happened to my husband and me in 2020 during a vacation in Laughlin, Nevada, at the Tropicana Hotel Casino. We stayed there for 3 nights. On the second night, around 1 a.m., my husband was still awake watching TV when the lamp on his nightstand started flickering and turning on by itself. Seeing this, he took out his phone and began recording. In the video, you can see the lamp flickering and many orbs passing by. As he got closer, you could also hear the sound of electricity. After a few seconds, this stopped and nothing else happened. My husband is not easily affected by these things and doesn't scare easily, so he just continued watching TV calmly. He didn't tell me about it because he didn't want to scare me. However, the next day, we had a somewhat strange experience. We were waiting for the elevator, and when one arrived, it opened its doors very slowly, so slowly that we didn't trust getting in. So, we waited for another one. When we got to the first floor and got off, the other elevator we hadn't wanted to get on also arrived and opened its doors. The weird part was that no one was using it, nor was anyone waiting for it, so it didn't make sense for it to arrive and stop on that floor out of nowhere. At that moment, my husband told me about the lamp, and it all just seemed like a couple of strange anecdotes. However, the last weird experience happened to me in the bathroom when the lights started flickering very strongly. Annoyed, I shouted, "Stop!" And at that moment, all the lights returned to normal. You might think it was some sort of electrical malfunction in the hotel, but before and after that time, we've stayed at that same hotel many times and have never had another similar experience. I was petrified but tried to calm down and reason. I even thought it could be the manager, but then I remembered I couldn't call him. So I stayed there, listening to the knocking, which got louder and more forceful. I decided to ignore it and try to sleep. After a few minutes, whoever was knocking left. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. After all, strange things happen in the capital. I managed to sleep a few hours, and when I woke up, I got ready to leave. When I opened my door, I saw the girl leaning against a wall. I'm not someone who likes eye contact, but on this occasion, for some reason, my gaze met hers. She looked tired and sad. I didn't say a word and continued on my way, somewhat relieved to see that she seemed okay. When I arrived in Coyoacán, I spent a pleasant afternoon with my friends. At one point, they asked me where I had stayed, and when I told them, a guy in the group said, "I think they found a body there today." Skeptical, I searched for the news online, and indeed it was the same hotel. I read the article to find out who it was, and my skin crawled when I saw that the victim was that girl and that there was a photo of the guy with sunglasses. The article labeled him as the possible murderer. I was in shock because the report said the events occurred in the early morning, which seemed impossible to me since I had seen the girl in the morning. A chill ran down my spine, and I shed some tears. My friends consoled me, and some even scolded me for not calling the police. But I honestly thought they were having an intimate moment, and that calling the police could even get me fined. I told my friends that I had information about what the guy looked like, but they advised me to send it online, as dealing with the police in Mexico could get me into trouble. So I did that when I got home. I tried to contact the authorities, but the person who answered me simply said, "She was a sex worker, the case is closed." This made me feel so powerless and sad that, to this day, I struggle to stay in hotels. Sometimes I think about who knocked on my door, and it horrifies me to think it might have been the guy trying to harm me since I appeared to be the only witness.